All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it.
All right, welcome back to the Underdog Ecom podcast. It is bright and early here for me, and Jack's living in the future late at night over in Vietnam. But we're here to talk again. We just wrapped up an episode. Last episode was episode 9 about Facebook ads, and we dug into the numbers of our campaigns and shared some of our embarrassing numbers, some of our good numbers. So check that out if you haven't. A topic that came up in that was product, and I think this doesn't get talked about enough in the e-com space, how important product is and product market fit, and making sure that something that you're selling, the thing you're selling, resonates with people. So we want to dig into that a little bit more here. Go ahead. Do you have anything to add, Jack?
No, I think I'm just going to say it just to kick it off, I guess. This is something I'm thinking about a lot at the moment because, I think every e-commerce founder is thinking a lot about this, and I'm trying to spend more time on product myself. In fact, for example, I saw this really cool backpack making course in California from a guy I know who's been in the industry for a long time. And I thought it's $1,500 the course, so it's not cheap, and it's only a week. It's 10 days long or something. And I'm thinking I wonder I should do this because I just want to be more knowledgeable in that the ground up side of making a product, but also because I think it helps a lot and I'm talking more about design here, but I think it just understanding the functionality behind a product, how it gets made and all that sort of stuff is I want to be more involved with that. And then from a strategy perspective, I want to be spending a lot more time on that because I do think it really makes a massive difference. We talked about in the last episode with just things like Facebook ads, but I think even for things like returning customers, for example, that returning customer rate can vary drastically depending on how your strategy is with new products, whether you're going to a new market, whether you're servicing your existing market, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's such an important strategy that gets overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned on that last episode, Jack, about the newness of a product and how that can help things and help spark the funnel and help your Facebook ads do better. And I think that's something that I'm learning a lot about, and we're kind of both roughly in the apparel space, so it definitely makes sense in the apparel world to have new things. And I've personally struggled with it because I want to avoid fast fashion. I don't want to release a new product. I've seen other brands release new products every couple weeks, it seems like, in the apparel world, and I don't want to do that because that feels like it's just filling landfills at the end of the day. But I definitely need to be doing more new things more often and have a more release cadence of maybe every quarter or something like that. And it's kind of a balancing act for me, but it definitely, I've seen the lift that it can provide. I had a really successful product launch in the winter, and it lifted my entire ad campaigns. All the numbers were just boosted because of that, because it was getting people talking. People were really interested in it. It sold out like crazy. Then they started looking at other stuff, and they've been talking about it since then, that product. It was an unbelievable launch, and it really showed me the power of product, because I think, and we talked about this at nauseum sort of in the Facebook ad podcast episode, last episode, but you can, and I've done this way too much, you can try and sell as much as you can, try really, really hard basically, and spin your wheels to sell a product that isn't that desirable or no one really wants or has a very, very, very small TAM. Excuse me. But what's going to be most successful is really focusing on what people want and what resonates with them. And then those types of products will just do better when it comes to Facebook ads. I mean, it kind of sounds like common sense when you think about it, but I've definitely had hats or t-shirts where I've focused too hard to try and get them to sell. And it's kind of well, if no one, some people want that, some people will buy it, sure. But to get the maximum potential out of your ad or whatever, it has to be something that the maximum people want or people are really, really jazzed about. And so I've seen myself, I'm pivoting from a lot of different things to other things that are more desirable over the last 6 months. And there's a lot of different ways to capture this, I think. You have to be in tune with the market and the like segment that you're in. So it's kind of like I need to be a little bit more in tune with fashion, and I need to be a little bit more in tune with apparel and like what's trendy in Gorpcore right now, for example, or that sort of thing. And my product in the winter really hit that, because I like my mom was telling me, she's like, oh, I saw a similar product at like this big name retailer the other day. So it's like that style that you're doing is very in. Like, all right, good job, me. Pat on my back. That's why we're here, right? No. It's like a lot of, and I was gonna say like capturing the customer demand and capturing what they want. I have a private Facebook group where I talk to like a lot of my super fans or whatever the brand and get feedback. Like I just posted some new prototypes in there to get feedback from people, and paying attention to the ad comments that you're getting, paying attention to the comments that you're getting on organic, and maybe even teasing like upcoming products or prototypes that you're working on. Like I think all of that is sort of like a product funnel in some ways, where you kind of just like really need to tap into what the market wants, and then once you figure out where that product market fit clicks, then you push down, because it's just like it's crazy. It's like night and day. It kind of feels like before I was just like hitting my head against the wall with Facebook ads, then all of a sudden this new product comes along and it's like boom, well, this is easy, like this is it just was like a light switch basically moment. But yeah, that's kind of, I think some of the important things are like listening to what customers want and paying attention to that.
I think
that's
also
enough of me ranting.
Well, no, I was just to add on that. I think I think it's important not to chase trends for the sake of chasing trends. And not obviously not saying that's what you've done, because you haven't, but to give an example of something, I think it's like 2020, 2021, every person and their mother was making like pickleball paddles. You know, like they're everywhere. Everywhere, every single brand was selling pickleball paddles because they were easy to make, but there's like nothing to differentiate them. And so, you know, because it was trendy, it was because everyone was like was into it at the time, and still to an extent now, everyone was getting into making that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they were the right brand for that. And I suppose that brings into my next question, and I'm always thinking about this as well, is do you think too a lot about, does this product fit my brand? Or do you think that shouldn't matter? Because I'm thinking a brand that comes to mind is like Ridge, for example, where they made wallets for a long time, and then suddenly they're making rings, and I saw they came out with like power banks, like very different products. I mean,
luggage.
Luggage. There we are. And so it's really interesting how he's approached that. And I've listened to some of the stuff he said before, where he's like, well, you know, people don't care. Like if they don't look at you and say, oh, I'm not going to buy from you anymore because I thought you were a wallet brand and now you're making rings. I can't possibly buy from you. And so he's like, that's what he says. Like, people don't care. I think that's right to an extent, but I also think, and another interesting thing he said as well is that he won't launch a product that is lower AOV than his existing product line, because basically he's like, well, I might as well just put more money back into selling that higher AOV product, which is really interesting. But it also, for me specifically, cuts out a lot of, if I were to do that, cuts out a lot of product options, because our products are around $200, so I have to make something that's at least $200, which is not actually that easy to do. I suppose, I'm interested in what you think about all of that.
I think that in general, and this comes up, I think, a lot in like creative content and Facebook ads and stuff, there's a lot of bleed over between the two, but like brand matters way more than the people operating the brand than the customer. Like, the customer doesn't care if your Facebook ad is off brand or uses a different color or different font. That's actually been one of my struggles with Facebook ads, is like I design them too on brand or just like too designy. But that's for the Facebook ad episode. But I think the brand, when you get to a certain point, the brand is less like you're a wallet company like Ridge. It's less like you're a wallet company, more like you make really cool sort of tactical, sort of high quality things for mostly men.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's what the brand is. It's less. And so I think that it matters less than we think it does. And you can kind of play with that and kind of see what happens. And, that's interesting about the AOV point. Like, I've got stickers on my shop, and for a while they were some of my highest selling category for like years ago. And I started I dropped all of my focus on them, like no mention on socials, no anything. And I don't sell that many of them anymore. They're mostly just for wholesale, to be honest, and sort of a loss leader in that way, even though they're high margin. But it's it is like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't think about any products that are less than my AOV, which is like 46. That's a really, really interesting thought. And I've seen, as I focus on higher end things, higher priced goods like jackets and stuff, like it is, it feels a lot easier in some ways. And I remember getting that feedback from someone a while ago that was like, you should focus more on hoodies because they're higher priced, and like a few other things that are higher priced. And it has made things in running the business a little bit easier. And oh, what was I going to say about product too? There was something else there to unpack. So I don't think I definitely still stay in the lane of my brand, kind of more like vintage inspired, outdoorsy type goods is generally what I'm going for. And I don't deviate that much from that. But I think when you're smaller, you need to like really focus on what works and what the brand is in some ways, and still be open to other ideas. Like if there's something that comes along that totally makes sense and works and people are asking me for it, I mean, it's ultimately your call as the operator to be like, do I choose like the numbers, like do I want financial success for the brand, or do I want the brand to be more brandy in some ways? And so like I'm not going to make a product that is super terrible for earth and falls apart after a couple weeks, even if it's high margin, because that's just like not what I stand for as a brand. But there's definitely people out there that would do that if it makes sense for the brand and gives them the numbers. Like, I think that at the end of the day, it depends on the person. It depends on what they care about and their priorities.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's certainly something I've struggled with because I've always, like, I probably, because I'm scared about this topic, quite honestly, have just defaulted to like designing more bags. And I think we're young, so I think, you know, it's the right thing to do, but I don't think we've exhausted that category yet. But it's in my category specifically, I see so many examples of people doing different things. Like you look at, I talked a lot about Peak Design, but they made like camera mounts and then tripods, and then, you know, very different from where they started. But then I've also seen other bag companies where they just continue making more bags, just more bags, more bags, more bags. You see apparel brands where all they do is make more apparel. You see, like for example, Patagonia. What's that? The food brand they've come out with now. Oh, what's
Patagonia
that?
Provisions.
Provisions. There we are. Yeah. So like that's obviously a play they've made for some reason or another.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a really interesting topic because it doesn't seem to be like a path to follow. And I think you're right in the sense that it's up to the operator. It's just, it can actually, but at the same time, it's such like a critical thing because it can send you in so many directions that it's very hard to think ahead of what those things are going to do. For example, like apparel, for example, I've kind of stayed away from apparel because I'm just scared about, you know, sizing and
SKU counts, low margin
sizing. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some huge benefits to apparel as well, but I've always kind of been scared of that, so I've stayed away from it. But it's something I'm certainly thinking about, and I think what you talk about with customers is really important, and I think it's probably the most important thing. It's tough because your customers are a certain segment of the market, and if you ever want to move beyond that, if you just do what they say, you're not really ever going to be able to move beyond that, at least in theory. But that being said, I don't know if that's entirely true because no one is like so one-dimensional. I mean, I have, you know, for example, most of my products are sold in the tennis or racket sports area, but a lot of people go hiking as well, or they go traveling, or they play other sports, or they and they might suggest something for that. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I think the good thing about customers is that they, especially if they've been bought several products from you in the past, they've got a good sense of what they're looking, you know, or you can get a good sense from them what they're kind of looking for from you as like an overarching theme that you can apply. But yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, and I think one thing too that is not thought about enough, especially in the smaller days, like the underdog days, is like when you add a new product category or a different type of product, like that, you just have to think about it differently. Like if I made something that was totally different than my current collections, then I have to think about marketing different. Then I have to think about my ad campaigns and stuff. Like when you get to the scale and level that Ridge is at, I think it's fine. Like you have a lot of the systems built out. You've got a huge customer base that is behind what you make. Same with Peak Design. Like those levels are a lot different than the underdog levels that we're at. And so I think focus, like it's just like you're going to splinter your focus. We've talked about that before, splintering that focus and splitting it off into other things that aren't really the same, then you're just kind of like, you're losing your focus in some ways. And so I think it is really important to listen to customers, and it's good to get customer feedback. Ultimately, though, that shouldn't necessarily drive the ship. That should just be more of like a bumper in some ways. And it's tricky because I feel like it's really important to listen to them, but also a lot of times they're wrong. So it's always a balancing act.
And then even like you said about like, I think it's such a good point in terms of most, unless you're like that size, it isn't, you shouldn't be almost thinking in terms of going into like way into different categories. You shouldn't be thinking too much about that. And because if you think about even something like Ridge, like I said, where even like Sean is thinking, well, unless I can make more money out of this product, I don't want to spend a penny on it because I'd rather put that back into wallets, for example. Like even a brand that size is having that thought process. So it kind of shows you that, you know, that it really, you can't put that much effort into something if you haven't got the, like, if you haven't got the resources to do it. What about like cadence? So you said like it's like so once a quarter. Are you, how are you building that in? What's your sort of cycle into building that in? So like say a product, if you're trying every quarter, like how much in advance are you planning all that stuff out, or not at all?
Being that I am doing this all by myself and don't like have a VA helping and that sort of thing, but like basically just running it myself and working part-time to full-time on my other job, my cadence is insane. It's like not necessarily insane. It's just like there is none. Basically, I make stuff and try and get them out by the season that they should be out by. And I know that a lot of the bigger apparel brands have like seasonal releases. That's probably more of my goal, is to have evergreen products that are purchased year round, but then do seasonal releases to kind of test out ideas and test out colorways and that sort of thing. I'm trying to get more focused on maybe getting new shirt colors, for example, or new sweatshirt colors out every 2-ish months, but it's also a capital thing. It's like, I don't think I have the capital flexibility to be investing in these new things if they're not winners. And so that's one thing that I've been struggling with, is like, I know that I need to release new things because that's important. That's what smart people tell me. And I think I see good returns on that, but I also don't want to over index into that and not be, and like get stretched too thin where I'm like restocking things, but also getting new things. So yeah, it's kind of just like all over the place right now. There's no set schedule.
I think the way I'm trying to think about it is trying to make it as easy to launch new products as possible. Not in the sense of like putting something out that I wouldn't want to put out there, but more in the sense that, well, what makes it hard? Well, I'd have to make a lot of them. Okay, well, what can I do to try and not make so many of these things? So I've been like trying to focus a lot on trying to get terms with suppliers where at least on the first production run they want like there's a way of making something on a very low scale so that I can try it out and it's not like a massive cash burden. That's something I've tried to, because that's a big mistake I made early on. Is I bought too much inventory, had very few customers, and it took me a while to sell it, and that really hurt the business. It was very hard to come back from that. And something I've started to do actually as the business has grown is actually produce less of each individual item and be out of stock more, and just accept that, because actually it's allowed me to launch more, take less cash burden. And the other thing is, for example, is trying to find ways to, like, for example, photography. Photography is, I mean, there's ways of doing it cheaply, but generally it's expensive getting product images of new product, all that sort of stuff, all the content needed for a new product. So I've tried to really focus on, you know, other ways that I can share photography with other brands, or like, who do I know who can maybe give me a deal or stuff like that, to just try and make the photography side as quick as possible and as low cost as possible. And that's helped a lot as well, because I just think those sort of things could be really kind of, it's a bit like, it's like when you first start your brand and you think you need all this stuff to get going, and actually, well, you may not, or at least there might be ways of doing it more cheaply. So as I've tried to do, because I think but again, it depends on your product as well and whether you can get the like lower volume. But I think that's can be sometimes your way to try and get at least kind of the volume up a little bit more.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that a lot and moved more from like thinking about trying to increase my order volumes to like figuring out what's going to really, really work. And so ordering smaller quantities in certain types of things or certain colors and that, and sort of like figuring out what that's going to look like rather than getting stuck with a big couple hundred t-shirt order or something like that. I'm curious if you've ever thought about non-tennis bags, like just like travel duffels or like travel backpacks or something.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of that, and I've actually
Hmm.
got a like a. Maybe I shouldn't show this as another brand, so probably I might just like briefly show it. I've got like a
Blur out the logo.
hydration pack. I'm not going to show it too much because I might get in trouble.
Ooh.
But I got like a hydration pack that I'm really interested in making, but I want to try and make it like as much non-plastic as possible in terms of like the actual bladder, like the hydration bladder people use for like hiking and
Cool.
stuff.
Yep.
But everyone I speak to tells me it's not possible because like because like there's a lot of stuff that go into it in terms of like plastic is good for it doesn't get mold and stuff like that, or at least not as easily. So if you like have
Yeah.
like a hydration bladder filled with water, you know, you don't want it to get, if it's like a plant-based fiber, it can go moldy, or if it's a
Mm-hmm.
metal,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very heavy. So I've been looking into
Mm-hmm.
also stuff like maybe like a titanium hydration bladder, because titanium is like lighter than stainless steel and it's very
Huh.
durable. So like I've been thinking about that sort of thing, and like I really want to get into all that sort of stuff. So
Huh.
I enjoy it. So that's another thing, going back to like why to do a product. I also think that if you are passionate about it, like I can't stop thinking about trying to make that and try and make a better version of that. And I think that's good. Doesn't necessarily mean the market's massive for it, but I think it does help
Yeah.
if you're passionate about it. Versus
Yeah.
like I was saying before about like pickleball paddles, because everyone else is making them and why not make them as well, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've definitely noticed that, like the things I care way more about or know or way more knowledgeable about in terms of like a product, like it just does better and it makes more sense as like as an operator kind of to focus on the things that you know and you're really good at or you really care about, because that'll come out in various ways throughout the product development cycle.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh. Nice. I've definitely been testing. I've purchased a few duffels from some of the big names out there, and I may or may not be working on my own duffel bag. I don't
I
know.
love that. I love that. Go for it. Well, if you
Long term vision.
need any contacts, let me know. I'll put you in
Ooh,
touch.
I might do that. Yeah. What was it? Oh, have you ever like emailed out to your customers and been like, "Hey, we're thinking about other bags. So what other bags do you like? What other bags do you use? Would you be interested in a duffel bag from us or something?"
So that's a good question. I haven't done that in the sense of like we're thinking about making this. What do you think? Which is I probably should. I definitely should. I've done more of the case of when somebody I do like sort of plain text emails to customers when they order and things like that, saying like thanks. Not the like the I think maybe it's like the second email or something saying like um would love to know. Or actually, no way I've done it is with like products we're out of stock of, and when customers like join the wait list for it, they get an email through saying thanks so much for joining our wait list. You're top of the line, whatever, head of the line for when it comes out. By the way, if you could just let me know what else you're interested in and what else you'd like to see from us. And what I've
Huh.
found is because they're like the intent is quite high on that email because they really want something that's not in stock, they tend to reply more. And so I've got a lot more replies from that over time with customers making suggestions. So, but what about you? I suppose on social media you've done that quite a bit as well, haven't you?
That's cool. That's interesting. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I've asked those questions on social a lot. Definitely engage in DMs and comments and stuff on social. I've got that Facebook private group that I
Yeah.
talked about for the fans. I also started using, there's I think it's a channel on Instagram. They're like one of their new features they
Yeah.
rolled out a bunch of months ago. I've been using that a lot, and I've seen other brands use it pretty well too. So that's been another sort of area to dip in directly into customer feedback. I've talked to people at markets, but one of my most regular sort of product feedback loops is my post-purchase survey that I have through KNO on the site. And
Yeah.
that asks like, what other products have you purchased from brands like us? Or no, it asks what brands have you purchased from that's like us over the last 6 months, and what other products would you like us to carry? And so I look at that feedback. No, I'm thinking about it. Not as often as I should, maybe every 6 months. But that's definitely one of the like deciding points of like, oh, they want more hoodies, they want more blah, they want more this. So that's another little like good feedback loop cycle point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've done that as well. I've got that on. I've done that for quite a while now. With just, I think I just have one or two questions, but I definitely asked like, what else would you like to see from us? Here's another
Mm-hmm.
one. What do you think about? Cause I hear about a lot of people talk about this, and I've never tried it. What do you think about when people say, "Why don't you launch ads for a new product that you haven't made yet, that you're not planning on pre-ordering yet, like putting on pre-order yet, just and then cancel their order just to kind of gauge interest in whether you can get like low CAC basically on that product and whether it's worth investing in. What do you think about that?
That feels to me like one of those growth hack viral tweet sort of ideas that sounds good on Twitter, but and maybe it works, I don't know, but I feel like the goodwill that would be tarnished for the brand behind that, and like me as a consumer, if that happened and I got an email that was like, you bought this, but oh, actually we canceled it, or if they take the honesty route and be like, oh, we're never actually going to make it, we were just gauging interest, you want it now? I don't know. I would not be very happy as a consumer if any of that happened, or if they even lied about it and said like it's out of stock or something. It's not. Yeah.
I think you have to execute. I think you have to execute on it really well as well for it actually to work. Not just on like the saying to the customer, we tricked you basically, but also, I mean, in order to be able to do that well, you have to basically have a finished prototype that looks amazing, because otherwise you don't really know whether it was the fact that the product was unfinished, or the fact that you didn't get any good photography for it or anything like that is why it didn't do so well, or because actually there's no demand for it. You don't actually know. So whether it's in theory, like in practice, whether it actually works or not, I think it depends what product category you're in. Maybe if you're like a consumer, like a CPG brand or something like that, and you can ask your like co-packer to like make some sort of, or you can like fake a drink that doesn't exist because all you need is the packaging and no one knows what's inside it or something like that. I guess you can do that. Totally. But like for me, for example, I mean, I have to have gone pretty much all the way into wanting to design something in order to have a prototype worth showing. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. But
yeah, that's definitely been thrown around there on the Twitters every now and then. Pre-orders, like maybe we need to have a whole episode about pre-orders probably, but like pre-orders is kind of that, but more legit. Yeah.
I think I've seen it. It's definitely getting used a lot. I think even now, but I think it's something we have to talk about. But it's a way of. I don't think it's necessarily a way of. Kickstarter positions it as a way of, for example, of like gauging interest in a product. I don't think most brands use it that way. I think they've pretty much decided on the product. I think it can help a lot more with how you market products. I think that's a good way of doing it. And that can be good when you're launching new products. Going back to the actual like new product development side of things. Like starting to understand what people care about in that product can help you maybe finish some stuff off in a different way with the product, or the way you position it and stuff like that. But that can be helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I think that's a wrap. Product. Pretty important stuff. Underrated, I think, stuff. But yeah, it's fun to talk through that. And thanks for listening, y'all. Leave us a review, 5 stars, as always. Jack's gonna sign off from the future. How's the future, Jack?
It's tiring. I mean, it's not too late. It's 10 o'clock. Yeah, 10 p.m. Not too bad. But my body doesn't know what time it is. So yeah, who knows?
Nice.
But
well, yeah. Thanks for staying up late with us.
No, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Bye.